holding a book or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, February 20th of 2026. Your readers today are
Don Williams
and J.J. Patek. And we'll open as we do with the weather, the last day of very warm weather for a little while. It'll be breezy today with rain and drizzle, the high of 49, and tonight it'll be breezy with intermittent snow and flurries with little or no accumulation with a low of 32. Tomorrow will be colder with intermittent snow and flurries with little or no accumulation with a high of 34 and a low of 26. Sunday, you're going to get cloudy with a little bit of snow, the high of 33 and a low of 27. So at least it's not going to get that cold. And, it won't be minus 50. And Monday, it'll be cloudy with a little snow with a high of 29 and a low of 18. And Tuesday, it will be cold with low clouds and a high of 24 and a low of 21. Wednesday, snow and rain in the p.m. with a high of 36 and a low of 28. And Thursday, we'll have low clouds with a high of 37 and a low of 27. And yesterday's high was 41 degrees. Depending on where you were, it was 47 where I was. And 29 for the low. The normal high is 34, the low of 20. The record high back in 1994 was 63 degrees, and the record low was minus 6 in 2015. And then last year's high was 19, and the low was 14. In the national cities, the high was Zapata, Texas at 91, and the low was Bryce Canyon, Utah at minus 19 degrees. I have a sister who's vacationing there to get away from all this cold. The Skywatch. The sunrise rose this morning at 7:06 a.m. behind all those clouds, and the sun will set at 5:53 p.m., and the moon rose at 8:23 this morning and will set at 9:51 p.m. So that is our weather outside.
Time to look at the front page. Robert Gavin, the Albany bureau chief, reports that Governor Kathy Hochul wants to send an additional $40 million in aid to the city of Buffalo, an increase expected to help the city balance its books as it faces an estimated $24 million budget deficit. I would think a $40 million infusion should help a lot with a $24 million budget deficit.
Maybe we can fix some of those streets up.
We'll see. The Buffalo-born governor is hiking the city's aid as part of her 30-day amendments to the $260 billion state budget she proposed last month. All told, it will bring the city's state aid in the budget to $206,285,233, according to the governor. As a lifelong Western New Yorker, I know that when Buffalo succeeds, the entire region succeeds, Hochul said in a statement. By providing an additional $40 million to the city of Buffalo, we are providing a boost and putting the city on solid financial ground while minimizing the burden on Buffalo's taxpayers. Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan, a former state senator elected in November, thanked Hochul for the much-needed financial help. He said the city will not need to borrow any additional money. My administration is working on a responsible multi-year plan to fix the structural imbalance Buffalo has operated under for years. But first we have to close the gap in the budget we inherited, Ryan said. This support from New York State allows us to balance this year's books without additional borrowing and reduces the pressure on Buffalo taxpayers in the years ahead. I'm grateful to Governor Hochul for recognizing Buffalo's urgent need and providing the resources that will stabilize our finances immediately as we take on the long-term work to put the city on solid footing. Ryan appeared before a joint legislative panel in Albany last week, telling his former colleagues we're in a really deep hole this year, so we're asking for help from the state to get out of this budget year. The aid is part of the state budget due April 1st, which will be negotiated in discussions among Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie, a Democrat from the Bronx, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, a Democrat from Yonkers, and then approved by state lawmakers. A spokesperson for Stuart Cousins said the proposed aid would need to be discussed among the state Democratic Conference, but said the leadership would want to be supportive of Buffalo and its important role in New York State. A hasty spokesman said the Speaker was supportive of the funding. Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Spoke said in a statement that she was incredibly grateful to the governor for the funding, calling it critical. Last year, the powerful Buffalo Democrat successfully pushed Hochul to approve a Buffalo financial aid package that included the sale of parking ramps to a newly created Buffalo Parking Authority and a 3% hotel occupancy tax. It is imperative that while the city fixes its fiscal challenges, the burden on our local taxpayers is minimized. And Governor Hochul's actions today do just that, Peoples-Spoke said. I look forward to working with Governor Hochul and Mayor Sean Ryan during the state budget process to deliver the tools needed to address the city of Buffalo's financial situation, while also making everyday life more affordable for our residents. The money must be used to close the city's budget gap and minimize burdens on city taxpayers while maintaining public safety, according to people with knowledge of the funding. Fillmore District Common Council Member Mitchell Nowakowski, who chairs the council's Finance Committee, said in a statement that the funding would provide much-needed relief to the city at a time when families are under pressure from all directions. This funding gives us the tools and the advantage to stabilize the immediate situation and put forward a responsible path ahead, Nowakowski said. Buffalo has the fortitude to solve its structural challenges, and this support allows us to do that work thoughtfully without shifting more cost onto residents. Buffalo's future depends on long-term discipline, smart growth, and a multi-year plan that ensures we will not repeat the sins of our past. Senate Minority Leader Robert Ort, a Republican from North Tonawanda, took a less favorable view of the aid. When I was a local mayor, I had to make tough decisions, Ort said. I didn't go to Albany and beg for a bailout. Kathy Hochul shouldn't force the hardworking people of my district to foot the bill for incompetent leadership in other cities. Ryan is still seeking a law to allow the city's Financial Control Board, the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, to borrow up to $500 million on the city's behalf over the next 4 years. State decisions increase insurance, health, and energy costs, stated former Republican gubernatorial candidate Mark Molinaro, who ran against former Governor Andrew Cuomo in 2018. Instead of fleecing taxpayers to bail out bad budgeting and policies, reform, restructure, and rescind. On Monday, Hochul also announced $1.5 billion in additional aid for New York City. Ort and Senators George Borrello, the Republican from Sunset Bay, and Thomas O'Mara, Republican from Big Flats, who represents part of Allegheny County, were among 19 senators who signed a letter urging Hochul not to use statewide taxpayer funds to bail out New York City officials' reckless spending. This bailout is unfair to the rest of the state, the letter said. The money for Buffalo, if approved in the final budget, will include a lump sum of $30 million and $10 million in state temporary municipal aid. The governor's initial budget had allocated $166,285,233 to the city, which included $5 million in temporary municipal aid. The rest was part of the state's aid and investments to municipalities, which helps fund cities, towns, and villages across the state. All told, Hochul announced $150 million in proposed new aid across the state yesterday. Rochester, Syracuse, and Yonkers are also each set to receive the maximum increase, $10 million in TMA aid, and elsewhere in Western New York, Hochul proposed increases in TMA aid for Niagara Falls, $6.2 million, Lackawanna, $2.2 million, Jamestown, $1.6 million, North Tonawanda, $1.5 million, Lockport, just under $1 million, City of Tonawanda, just under $1 million, Olean, $780,000, Batavia, $610,000, Dunkirk, $550,000, Salamanca, $320,000, Cheektowaga, $172,000, Amherst, $139,000, Village of Kenmore, $136,000, $135,000, whatever. Town of Tonawanda, $123,000, and dozens of other municipalities, thank you for not naming them, across Erie, Niagara, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Wyoming, Orleans, Genesee, and Allegheny counties. Take a Philadelphia accountant to read through that budget from the sound of it. Niagara Falls Mayor Robert Restaino had testified before the Joint Legislative Committee last week, requesting $200 million in state aid to help Niagara Falls complete its Centennial Park project, for a multi-purpose facility focusing on amateur and youth sports. Yesterday, Restaino thanked Hochul, saying the increased aid will go a long way in our efforts to enhance services to the taxpayers and other initiatives to beautify and develop city neighborhoods.
Thank you.
1st of April is when that budget is due. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I'm sure everybody will have to take a cut, but how much of a cut remains to be seen. Well, the new Medicaid work rule is likely to hit middle-aged adults hard. This is from Samantha Lisson, Sam Whitehead of KFF Health News. Lori Kelly's deteriorating vision has made it hard for her to find steady work. The 59-year-old who lives in Harrisburg, North Carolina, closed her nonprofit Circus Art School last year because she could no longer see well enough to complete paperwork. She then worked making dough at a pizza shop for a bit. Currently, she sorts recyclable materials, including cans and bottles, at a local concert venue. It's her main source of income, but that work isn't year-round. This place knows me, and that place loves me, says of her employer. I don't have to explain to this place why I can't read. Kelly, who lives in a camper, survives on less than $10,000 a year. Wow. She says that's possible in part because of her Medicaid health coverage, which pays for arthritis and anxiety medications and has enabled doctor visits to manage high blood pressure. But she worries about losing that coverage next year when rules take effect requiring millions of people like Kelly to work, volunteer, attend school, or perform other qualifying activities for at least 80 hours a month. I'm scared right now, she said. Before the coverage changes were signed into law, Republican lawmakers suggested that young unemployed men were taking advantage of the government health insurance program that provides coverage to millions of low-income or disabled people. Medicaid is not intended for 29-year-old males sitting on their couches playing video games, House Speaker Mike Johnson told CNN. But in reality, adults ages 50 to 64, particularly women, are likely to be hit hard by the new rules, said Jennifer Tolbert, Deputy Director of Program on Medicaid and Uninsured at KFF, a health information nonprofit that includes KFF Health News. For Kelly and others, the work requirements will create barriers to keeping their coverage, Tolbert said. Many could lose Medicaid as a result, putting their physical and financial health at risk. Starting next January, some 20 million low-income Americans in 42 states and Washington, D.C. will need to meet the activity requirements to gain or keep Medicaid health coverage. Alabama, Florida, Kansas, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Wyoming didn't expand their Medicaid programs to cover additional low-income adults under the Affordable Care Act, so they won't have to implement the work rules. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office predicts the work rules will result in at least 5 million fewer people with Medicaid coverage over the next decade. Work rules are the largest driver of coverage losses in the GOP budget law, which slashes nearly $1 trillion to offset the cost of tax breaks that mainly benefit the rich and increase border security, critics say. We're talking about saving money at the expense of people's lives, said Jane Tavares, a gerontology researcher at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. The work requirement is just a tool to do that. Department of Health and Human Services spokesperson Andrew Nixon said requiring able-bodied adults to work ensures Medicaid's long-term sustainability while safeguarding it for the vulnerable. Exempt are people with disabilities, caregivers, pregnant, and postpartum individuals, veterans with total disabilities, and others facing medical and personal hardship, Nixon told KFF Health News. Medicaid expansion has provided a lifeline for middle-aged adults who otherwise would lack insurance, according to Georgetown University researchers. Medicaid covers 1 in 5 Americans ages 50 to 64, giving them access to health coverage before they qualify for Medicaid at age 65. Among women on Medicare, these ages 50 through 64 are more likely to face challenges in keeping their coverage than their younger female peers are and have a greater need for health care services, Tolbert says. These middle-aged women are less likely to be working the required number of hours because many serve as family caregivers or have illnesses that limit their ability to work, Tolbert said. Tavares and other researchers found that just 8% of the total Medicaid population is considered able-bodied and not working. This group consists largely of women who are very poor and have left the workforce to become caretakers. Among this group, 1 in 4 are 50 or older. They're not healthy young adults just hanging out, the researchers stated. Plus, making it harder for people to maintain Medicaid coverage may actually undermine their ability to work because their health problems go untreated, Tolbert said. Regardless, if this group loses coverage, their chronic health conditions will still need to be managed, she said. Adults often start wrestling with health issues before they're eligible for Medicare. If older adults don't have the means to pay to address health issues before age 65, they'll ultimately be sicker when they qualify for Medicare, costing the program more money, health policy researchers said. Many adults in their 50s or early 60s are no longer working because they're full-time caregivers for children or older family members, said caregiver advocates who refer to people in the group as the sandwich generation. The GOP budget law does allow some caregivers to be exempted from the Medicaid work rules, but the carve-outs are very narrow, said Nicole Jorwick, Chief Program Officer for the group Caring Across Generations. She worries that people who should qualify for an exemption will fall through the cracks. You're going to see family caregivers get sicker, continue to forego their own care, and then you're going to see more and more families in crisis situations, Jorwick said. Paula Wallace, 63, of Chedester, Arkansas, said she worked most of her adult life and now spends her days helping her husband manage his advanced cirrhosis. After years of being uninsured, she recently gained coverage through her state's Medicaid expansion, which means she'll have to comply with the new work requirements to keep it. But she's having a hard time seeing how that will be possible. With me being his only caregiver, I can't go out and work away from home, she said. Wallace's husband receives Social Security disability insurance, she said, and the law says she should be exempt from the work rules as a full-time caregiver for someone with a disability. But federal officials have yet to issue specific guidance on how to define that exemption, and experience from Arkansas and Georgia, the only states to have run Medicaid work programs, shows that many enrollees struggle to navigate complicated benefit system. I'm very concerned, Wallace said. Mm-hmm. So, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. And the time is 17 minutes past the hour, and we move on to editorials. Today it's positive thinking. We're looking forward to a Tesla solar panel production and a Bear Lake preserve. Hope springs eternal. Tesla Incorporated execs are starting to talk about getting back into the solar panel manufacturing business. As reported by the News' David Robinson, the company has ambitious plans to refocus on solar energy. This is not the first, second, or perhaps not even the third time the public has been told the company would focus on solar. Maybe this time the effort will finally gain traction. Tesla, an electric vehicle maker, filed a report earlier this month that it now employs 2,432 people at its Buffalo Niagara factory and a warehouse in Hamburg. That makes for an increase of 373 or 18% from a year ago and well above the 1,560 worker minimum employment target set by the state. New York spent $958 million in taxpayer funds to build a massive factory for Tesla on South Park Avenue. However, much of the company's growth had nothing to do with solar energy. So what Tesla CEO Elon Musk said during a conference call late last month is interesting. The solar opportunity is underestimated. We're going to work toward getting 100 gigawatts a year of solar cell production, integrating across the entire supply chain from raw materials all the way to finished solar panels. That's a lofty goal, given that the entire U.S. solar panel capacity is only 65 gigawatts, and the production capacity for solar cells is a little more than 3 gigawatts. But still, if Tesla can finally pull off the large-scale production of this renewable power source, it could help New York realize its clean energy goals. Fingers crossed that Musk's big thinking is based in reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Western New York Land Conservancy is on a money-raising mission, with the sum of $900,000 to purchase, maintain, and protect Bear Lake and much of the land surrounding it in Chautauqua County from future development, as reported by the News' Mackenzie Schumann. The additional funds would supplement the $675,000 state grant the Land Trust was awarded in December by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. The Bear Lake Preserve would cover 311 acres outside the town of Stockton, including the 114-acre lake. It is currently privately owned. Once protected, the property will be publicly accessible and maintained by the Land Conservancy. Public access, as well as the educational efforts of the Conservancy, can increase knowledge of the rare plant and animal species and fortify support for more protection efforts. A key element of this potential acquisition is that the Bear Lake property abuts the already protected 225-acre floating fen preserve and 168-acre College Lodge forest. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy also recently acquired the 133-acre Looney property directly next to Bear Lake. Together, these properties would create a substantial area protected forever from development and able to support diverse and rare wildlife habitats and plants. As Marissa Riggi, executive director of the Western New York Land Conservancy, said, the lands represent a wide range of habitats, home to some of the rarest plant and animal communities in our region. Much of the shoreline's wetland habitat provides protection for fish and other aquatic species and helps the lake provide flood protection, clean stormwater runoff, and absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, Riggi added. As with so many of the Land Conservancy's efforts, Bear Lake is a well-planned project that can benefit the region for decades to come. It deserves support.
Then we have a couple of political cartoons here today from Adam Ziglis of the Buffalo News. We have a baby carriage and the barely visible profile of our president, and a person representing First Amendment rights with the FCC button on him on his lapel there, and he's handing a pacifier to this screaming, crying infant, apparently trying to assuage his issue.
Or else he's taking it away. It's hard to tell.
Hard to tell anymore what they're doing. Yeah, you're right. And the other one from Gary Varvel from Creators Syndicate, we have a cartoon, apparently in the New York City area, and we have a cartoon of Mamdani, the new mayor there, and we have the characters from Seinfeld, and they're all standing behind this counter, and he's yelling at them, "You pay for everyone else, but no soup for you." So, another reference to you pay the price, but you don't benefit.
Well, on that same page, Martin Schramm from the Tribune News Service presents a picture-imperfect presidency broadcast to a national audience. History was being made in Washington, and once again, you had the perfect seat. You had the same vantage point savvy news photographers all chose on Wednesday. It was the same spot news camera pros also chose when they snapped another nearly identical historic news photo in the last century. 7 guys, top execs of America's tobacco companies, standing side by side at a 1994 House hearing with their right hands raised. They were swearing to tell the truth. Then they testified that nicotine isn't addictive. Fast forward to last Wednesday in the House Judiciary Committee hearing room. News photographers, live TV cameras, you and I all had the identical vantage point. We could see U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi sitting stone-faced at the witness table. Behind her, a number of women stood side by side in the audience, all with their right hands raised. They weren't talking at all. Yet the testimony they gave in silence was the most compelling of anything we heard as we watched on our TV, computer, and smartphone screens. Democratic members of the House had asked the women, mostly in early middle age and surviving victims who, as very young teens, were lured long ago by billionaire Jeffrey Epstein to entertain and service his rich and powerful friends at his Caribbean island. On this day, House Democratic representatives had asked all those Epstein sex abuse survivors to stand and raise their hands if they had tried to get Bondi's Justice Department officials to agree to listen to them present evidence of crimes Epstein's rich and powerful friends had committed by pressuring these then underage girls to perform sexual acts with them. All the women who were standing raised their hands, signaling yes. Then they were asked how many never heard back from Bondi's Justice Department. Again, all raised their hands.
In her prepared testimony, Bondi had said she was deeply sorry for what any victim had been through and that any accusation of criminal wrongdoing be taken seriously and investigated. But when Representative Pramila Jayapal, a Democrat from Washington, asked Bondi to turn around, face these victims who now call themselves survivors, and apologize to them face-to-face, President Trump's Attorney General remained expressionless and unmoving. Finally, Bondi spoke. I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics. At this point, we need to remind each other the participants in this hearing were addressing different audiences. The Democrats and the women who are Epstein sex crime survivors are speaking to an audience of millions of American voters. That included not just Democrats and independents, but also the many Trump-voting Republicans who for years had been demanding the release of all Epstein case documents. They had insisted Democrats must have something to hide. Bondi, by contrast, was speaking to an audience of just one, her boss, President Trump. As his polls have been dropping, promises were being rescinded and reversed, and as you surely have noticed when bad things happen, Trump's fallback is his compulsion for sandbox combat and name-calling. Bondi long ago became a master in playing Trump's game Trump's way. So she came to the hearing armed with a huge loose-leaf binder filled with negative research on each Democrat who would question her. Every time a Democrat pressed her to give simple yes or no responses or provide specific details or numbers, she would instead flip over in her negative book and counterattack. So when Democrat Representative Jamie Raskin from Maryland pressed Bondi to be responsive to the question, Trump's Attorney General's response was hardly nuanced. You don't tell me anything, you washed-up loser lawyer. You know she was speaking our president's lingo. Bondi reached for her negative research binder when Representative Becca Balint, a Democrat from Vermont, pressed the Attorney General about the relationship that various Trump officials had with Epstein over the years, especially Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who is Epstein's next mansion neighbor on New York's swanky side. And Bondi replayed Balint, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning his Jewish. At this point, Balint erupted, Oh, do you want to go there? Are you serious? You are talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost a grandfather in the Holocaust. Really? Really? Balint got up and left.
And so it goes. This has been a week where lots went very wrong for Trump, especially when he tried to autocratically abuse his presidential powers. In an exceedingly rare move, a federal grand jury refused the effort by Trump's Justice Department to indict 6 Democratic lawmakers who had been valiant veterans and made a video reminding troops they had the right and constitutional duty to refuse any order they thought was illegal. Their comments in a video essentially said the same thing Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth had also said before he got his present job. Then the Internal Revenue Service improperly shared personal tax data info of immigrants with the Department of Homeland Security. And all flights to El Paso, Texas were hurriedly canceled when DHS improperly deployed a laser-based counter-drone weapon without taking the required security safeguards. Trump recently said the ICE and Border Patrol forces in Minneapolis weren't going to be drawn down. Yesterday, they were totally withdrawn. And enough House Republicans just joined Democrats to halt Trump's imposition of tariffs on Canada. As Jimmy Breslin's book title once asked about the woeful first-year New York Mets, can't anybody here play this game?
Well, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. It is now 29 minutes past the hour, and we move on to My View from Mike Silverman of Amherst, who thinks of himself as an empiricist, and science continually reveals wonders. What do you believe? Do you have a particular outlook on life? How would you describe yourself if you were being interviewed? I refer to myself as empiricist. Empiricism asserts that all knowledge is based on experience derived from the senses. This point of view must have developed through my college experience, where I spent a great deal of time in various laboratories doing experiments for my science courses. After acquiring 2 degrees in the sciences, I worked for several years on research grants from different departments at SUNY Buffalo before eventually embarking on a teaching career. While many can be set in their beliefs, I easily change my thinking if persuaded by new research information. Imagine how shocked people must have been in the past when great new discoveries in science compelled them to view life and the world in completely different ways. There was Isaac Newton's inspiration from a falling apple, which led to his theory of gravitation. The Polish astronomer and mathematician Nicolaus Copernicus was the first to proclaim that the sun, and not the earth, was the center of the universe. An ancient Greek named Anaximander, who lived in the 6th century BC, was the first known individual to develop naturalistic theories on the origin of life in the universe without relying on supernatural myths. Atomic theory also owes its initial conceptions to a pre-modern era Greek, Democritus. However, it was not until the early 20th century that British physicist Ernest Rutherford proved the existence of atoms and ushered in the age of quantum mechanics. At about this time, Albert Einstein, a lowly clerk working in a Swiss patent office, was thinking big thoughts related to time, space, and motion, which he ultimately revealed as the theory of relativity. These great ideas of scientific and mathematical thinkers have always enthralled me. Although now retired from teaching, I still much enjoy reading and learning much more about them. However, in my opinion, the greatest scientific idea of all remains Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. At the time Darwin signed on to the HMS Beagle as a naturalist in 1831, he'd been studying for the church. During the ship's 5-year circumnavigation of the globe, it made stops in South America, the Galapagos Islands, and Australia. At each location, Darwin made copious notes on the local fauna and gathered many samples. At the Galapagos, Darwin noticed how many finches, non-seagoing birds who'd hitchhiked on boats, had developed changes in their beaks so the birds could adapt to limited food sources. The odd native animals in Australia fascinated him and caused him to wonder how a creator could have made such different creatures there to occupy the same ecological niches as species elsewhere. Returning to England in 1836, Darwin spent the next 23 years cogitating, and in 1859 he published his famous tome on the theory of evolution on the origin of species. Today, with genetically modified plants, hybridized farm and pet animals, and annually changing biological vaccines, evolution is widely accepted and even employed by people the world over. It's not a matter of faith, but a proven empirical concept.
In another voice, today we hear from Jonathan Rivera, who represents the 149th Assembly District. More than 97% of the population of Erie County has health coverage, according to the latest data from the U.S. Census Bureau. While that is very good news for many of our most vulnerable residents, including the more than 1 in 5 who rely on Medicaid for their health care, finding and accessing quality health care can be a challenge. Fortunately, there are numerous programs working to help those underserved populations get the care they need. Adult Health NP House Calls and Centering Pregnancy are 2 of those programs. They rely on funding received under the state's Medicaid Quality Incentive Program. This program has been a vital resource in improving health outcomes for the more than 5 million New Yorkers enrolled in Medicaid, including nearly 470,000 in Western New York. Funding to community-based organizations like these addresses the core causes of health disparities and advances the quality and equity of care for underserved populations. These community-based programs and providers help keep people from falling through the cracks. The Centering Pregnancy Program is an innovative project that blends prenatal care, education, and peer support in a shared, empowering experience for expectant mothers. Black, Indigenous, and people of color face deep disparities in maternal health, with those disparities increasing the probability of low birth weight, preterm births, and environmental risks that threaten healthy beginnings. Centering Pregnancy is working to reduce preterm births, increase breastfeeding rates, and empower participants to take charge of their health and their future. Simultaneously, Adult Health NP House Calls focuses on Medicaid beneficiaries who have not recently used the health system. After identifying these members, the program provides in-home visits with a comprehensive physical exam and other care services. Adult Health NP House Calls also helps reduce disparities by establishing and keeping a care plan that improves patients' health outcomes. These efforts wouldn't happen without quality incentive support. Looking ahead, it is vital that funding for the QIP be maintained or even expanded in the 2027 state budget. For the sake of the people who rely on these programs, I'm committed to making that one of my budget priorities. That's Jonathan Rivera, 149th Assembly District.
In Buffalo next. This one's really interesting. In case you didn't know it, you're going to find out. Your car may be ratting you out to your insurance, or your insurer. This is from Chris Isidore from CNN. The day before Philip Siefke went shopping for a new car insurance policy, he happened to hit his brakes hard while driving. Not 24 hours later, when he priced a policy with Progressive, he was shocked to find the insurance he already knew about that mundane experience. I'm like, how did they have my information? Siefke said. He called Progressive and demanded to know how the insurer has such detailed information about his driving habits. The information came from Toyota. A rep explained to the incredulous Siefke. She said, probably you signed up for a research project and it's coming from the telemetry that's in your car. Siefke said. When he protested that he had done no such thing, she said, oh yeah, you did. Just about everybody does. About 90% of new cars on the road collect information on the driving behavior of whoever's behind the wheel, according to Telemetry, an automotive strategic advisory firm. Many automakers sell that information to third parties like insurance companies. Car buyers do have to agree to allow the collection and sale of their data, but that agreement is often buried deep in the fine print of the documents people sign when they buy a car, part of the sheaf of papers about prices, loan terms, and warranties. Technically, they had permission, said Sam Abuel Samid, the auto annualist with Telemetry. It's something that people should be aware of but are not. Most people have no idea they're agreeing to the sale of their data, said John Yanchunis, an attorney at Morgan & Morgan, whom Siefke hired to sue Toyota, Progressive, and a third-party data provider in April. If you go buy a car, you have a single focus, right? The price, Yanchunis said. They don't give people that choice to see what's going to happen with this data at the time of the acquisition of the product. They bury it. And why do people bury things? Because they don't want consumers to know what they're doing. The collection and sale of driving data is widespread across the automotive industry, the Federal Trade Commission noted in a 2024 warning to consumers. The auto companies, however, say this data is collected with the intent to use this information to protect drivers. Auto industry trade groups like the Alliance for Automotive Innovation defend the collection of driving data. It says automakers use these programs to provide information and support the car's proper functioning and improve safety, for example, by alerting the automaker if the car has an issue that needs servicing. Consumer advocacy groups and the FTC, however, flag privacy concerns. Car brands quietly entered the data business by turning their vehicles into powered data-gobbling machines, said a report from Mozilla Foundation, a technology privacy interest group, which characterized the auto industry as the worst product category we have ever reviewed for privacy. In its 2024 consumer warning, the FTC wrote that cars can collect a lot of data about people. This data could be sensitive, and its collection, use, and disclosure can threaten consumers' privacy and financial welfare. People should have the right to decide what they want to share with third parties, and they should not have those privacy rights taken from them without choice, Jan Chudny said. Shifke feels he didn't get that choice, and he ended up paying for it. Last January, he moved forward with Progressive's policy that cost less than $300 a month. With a good driving record, no accidents since the 1990s, he thought he'd maintain a good rate. But when it came time to renew his policy 6 months later, his rate had jumped up more than $400 a month with no explanation. Here's an eye-opener for you.
Oh. Cost less than $300 a month, and it jumped to more than $400 a month. That's more than a 33% increase.
Well, because he slammed on his brake once, probably to avoid a deer.
Yeah, or a dog or whatever. Kids run out from behind cars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, meanwhile, Samantha Chrisman reports that every so often a brand comes to Western New York that divides the populace. Think Chick-fil-A, Krispy Kreme, Sonic Drive-In. Some people nearly salivate at the news of a certain brand entering the market, having tried the chain elsewhere or having always wanted to. They are the ones who camp out overnight the day before it opens, or wait in shockingly long lines to be among the first to taste it. Others recoil at the mere thought of yet another fast food chain entering the market and pray it doesn't take market share from their favorite mom-and-pop restaurant. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers is one of those brands. The popular fast food chicken chain is expanding into Western New York. It has set its sights on an empty Red Lobster building on Maple Road in Amherst for its first location. Founded in Louisiana in 1996, the company is known for its breaded, marinated chicken fingers and signature dipping sauce. The recipe is top secret, but foodies have said it's probably mayonnaise, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, black pepper, salt, and garlic powder. Buffalo Bills long snapper Reed Ferguson is a fan. He took to social media to celebrate the impending arrival of the chicken chain. Ferguson played football for Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, where Raising Cane's is headquartered, and has missed having regular access to the regional southern chain since moving to Buffalo. "We did it, y'all," he wrote on X. The restaurant previously focused its expansion on Texas, California, the Southwest, and the Midwest, but made a huge push into New York in 2023 with a giant 8,000 square foot location in Times Square. Most of its New York locations have been concentrated in Manhattan and Long Island, but the current push into Western New York is part of its growth spurt. Raising Cane's declined to talk about its long-term plans for the Buffalo and Agri market because it hasn't officially closed on the Amherst deal. It did confirm that the property is under contract and said construction is expected to begin next year. The company is also planning a location in the town of Henrietta. I can't wait.
Yeah, one more stuff. More food. Probably not good for you. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Boncaldo Mary Jane of Orchard Park. Clark David G. Monk. Klein Janice, 82 years old. Langan Miriam, I didn't even do this, 73 years old. Long Barbara, McKinnon Thomas, O'Day Jean of Arc Marie, she's 61 years old. Reed Martin, who's also 64 years old. If you need further information of any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. We do have one obituary of note. Tom Newman, 74, character actor who also wrote and directed. Tom Noonan, a character actor and filmmaker known for playing villains in Manhunter and The Last Action Hero, died on Valentine's Day. He was 74. The death was confirmed by Fred Decker, the director of Monster Squad, who wrote on Facebook, "Tom's indelible performance as Frankenstein is a highlight of my modest filmography." Karen Sillis, Noonan's What Happened Was co-star, who also confirmed the death on social media, did not reply immediately Wednesday to the Times' request for comment. Noonan had a nearly 40-year career on TV and in film, making his mark with the role on Manhunter in the 1986 movie based on a Thomas Harris novel. In that movie, Manhunter, which starred William Peterson of CSI Crime Scene Investigation as an FBI agent, and Succession star Brian Cox as Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Noonan played Francis Dolarhyde, the serial killer, also known as the Tooth Fairy. It was a performance that knocked out Decker, who then pursued Noonan for Monster Squad. And playing a killer wasn't unusual for Noonan, who stood 6'5" or 6'6", depending on who you trust. On a 2013 episode of the TV's The Blacklist, he played the Stewmaker, a man with a taste for dissolving human bodies in acid. How pleasant. In the 1993 comedy The Last Action Hero, he was the Ripper, a fictional nemesis who comes to life in a high-concept film within a film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as action star Jack Slater. He was born in Greenwich, Connecticut on April 12th of 1951 and raised by his math teacher, Mother Rita, and a large extended family after the death of his father, John Ford Noonan Sr. He went to school at Yale Drama and later founded New York's Paradise Factory Theater with Jack Kruger at the site of the Paradise Ice Cream Factory, where the ice cream cone was invented. The two built a theater and rehearsal rooms where the condemned building stood, and it now builds itself as bringing the rigor of theatrical discipline to the process of cinematic art and bringing the intimacy and immediacy of the cinema into the theatric performance art. And he said, "I wish I had more success as an actor." He told the Times in a dash of melancholy in 2015, "I think people call me because they channeled surfing late at night and they see me in a movie on cable." He was preceded in death by his older brother, a couple of white chicks sitting around, playwright John Ford Noonan Jr., who died in 2018 at the age of 77. Again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
From the entertainment section, as I like to call it, Georgia Nichols reports on the stars. Happy birthday for Friday, February 20th, 2026. You are thoughtful, people-pleasing, and sympathetic. You have a genuine concern for the welfare of others. This year holds exciting changes. It will bring increased personal freedom. Stay flexible. For Aries, today the moon is in your sign, bringing you a bit of extra good luck. However, both Saturn and Neptune can make you self-critical. Tonight, you're blessed. Taurus, for some reason, you might feel self-critical today. Cut yourself some slack. Saturn is lined up with Neptune, and those two are so different they don't even like to be in the same sentence. Tonight, solitude. Gemini, fortunately, you look great in the eyes of others because the Sun and Venus are high in your chart, which is flattering to you. Tonight, friendships. Cancer, be careful about judging parents, bosses, or VIPs today because many people feel disappointed in authority figures today. Tonight, show respect. Leo, this is the classic day to be disappointed in your ideals as they relate to religion, the government, or any institution where you expect high standards. Tonight, explore. Virgo, it would be wise to postpone important financial decisions, especially concerning inheritances, shared property, taxes, and debt for another day. Tonight, check financial paperwork. Libra, relationships are important to you because you are a people person. You like to have others in your life. Tonight, listen with sympathy. Scorpio, be gentle with coworkers and customers today because it's easy to jump on someone if you think they made a mistake. Tonight, get organized. Sagittarius, romance might disappoint you today. Likewise, your relations with your kids might discourage you. Tonight, relax. Capricorn, you can be a perfectionist, a quality that might lead to disappointment in a family member today, or conversely, it might lead someone to be disappointed in you. tonight. Enjoy home and family. Aquarius, be careful because with fiery Mars in your sign, you're pumped, but Saturn and Neptune are muddying the waters to influence your thinking. Tonight, conversations. Pisces, financial matters or something to do with your possessions or something that you own are subject to confusion today. Tonight, check your money and possessions. Well, today in history, 1792, President George Washington signed an act creating the United States Post Office Department, the predecessor of the U.S. Postal Service. In 1862, William Wallace Lincoln, the 11-year-old son of President Lincoln and First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln, died at the White House from what was believed to be typhoid fever. In 1905, the U.S. Supreme Court in Jacobson versus Massachusetts upheld 7-2 compulsory vaccination laws intended to protect the public's health. In 1907, President Theodore Roosevelt signed an Immigration Act which excluded it's hard to read this, idiots, imbeciles, feeble-minded persons, epileptics, insane persons, among others, from being admitted to the United States.
Oh, boy.
I got to leave that alone.
Yes.
In 1939, more than 20,000 people attended a rally held by the German-American Bund, a pro-Nazi organization at New York's Madison Square Garden. In 1962, astronaut John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth, circling the globe 3 times aboard Project Mercury's Friendship 7 spacecraft, in a flight lasting 4 hours and 55 minutes before splashing down safely in the Atlantic Ocean. That was Project Mercury's Friendship 7, not to be confused with Channel 7's rocket ships.
You got to get that in there.
In 1965, America's Ranger 8 spacecraft crashed into the moon's surface, as planned, after sending back thousands of pictures of the lunar surface.
Yeah. And from Jonathan D. Epstein, we have a story again on Buffalo Next. The firm hopes to start solar farm in Somerset. The company that wants to turn the former coal-fired power plant in the town of Somerset into a utility-sized solar energy project hopes to start construction this year. The project would have the capacity to generate 125 megawatts of electricity, providing a boost to the state's efforts to get more of its power from renewable sources. Somerset Solar, an affiliate of AES Corporation, plans to erect a solar array at the closed former AES Somerset plant at 7725 Lake Road. The solar farm would be about 25 times the size of the typical 5-megawatt community solar project and would produce enough power for more than 25,000 homes. It would support nearly 100 construction jobs for 2 years. That thing's going to be huge. The $277 million project would be located on 5 parcels of mostly vacant industrial and agricultural land just south of the Lake Ontario shoreline, totaling 1,784 acres. Only 683 acres would contain the new facility itself, which would be connected to the existing Kinty substation. Somerset Solar would lease the land but would not use any of the buildings and would not construct new buildings. The venture was approved in December of 2024 by the state's Office of Renewable Energy Siting and the Electric Transmission under a separate government review process that effectively bypasses a local municipality. AES is pursuing a similar 125 megawatt project in the town of Westfield. But the Somerset Town Board unanimously adopted a resolution in support nonetheless, citing potential benefits under a host community agreement and a 20-year special discounted property tax agreement designed for such projects. Somerset Solar is asking the Niagara County Industrial Development Agency to approve that property tax arrangement along with unspecified sales and mortgage recording tax savings. The company says the project is not viable without that assistance, which provides long-term tax stability and guarantees not only for the company, but also the town and school district. Somerset Solar would pay $5.83 million in host community payments and another $8.75 million in special taxes. That's a total of $14.6 million in revenue to the taxing jurisdiction over 20 years, but it's not clear how much AES and Somerset Solar will save because the state is overseeing the process with its own formula, not local assessments. A public hearing will be held on March 9th at 2 p.m. in the town of Somerset, and the application will be considered by the NCIDA the next month. I want a little bit of information. I'm waiting for public hearing, said NCIDA Chairman Mark Onesi. That should answer some questions for me as well as for some other people. Construction will likely take 2 years, said Robert Panaski, an attorney representing Somerset Solar. Only 2 full-time jobs will be created, creating an annual salaries of $102,000 each for operations and maintenance. The project is a second major venture at the former AES plant. TerraWolf Incorporated, subsidiary of Wolf Compute of Eastern Maryland, is using 4 buildings and 30 acres of a $410 portion of the plant for a Bitcoin mining data center facility, and is now adding an artificial intelligence computing as well. And briefly in business, Sanborn Robotics Company gets tax breaks for NCIDA. The Niagara County Industrial Development Agency approved $766,067 in tax breaks for a $4.6 million project by NeoFab Robotics Corporation, a robotic manufacturing company that's being launched by Veronica and Dwayne Duncan of Niagara Industrial Mechanical Services. The new company, which will specialize in robotic and semi-automated fabrication, plans a 28,000 square foot production facility on a 4-acre property in Sanborn in the Vantage Industrial Park, where NCIDA is located, and hopes to add 2 more buildings over the next 5 years. The IDA also approved a revised incentive package for $14.3 million, Woodstream Landing project by David Mazur's North Star Development of Western New York, which plans to construct an 80-unit apartment project in Wheatfield with 8 two-story buildings. The project was previously approved for nearly $2.2 million in tax break, but the developer has to increase the mortgage by $1 million since then, so he sought a $7,500 increase in tax relief on the loan.
Meanwhile, in Washington, the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts, a panel made up of President Trump's appointees, yesterday approved his proposal to build a ballroom larger than the White House itself, where the East Wing once stood. The 7-member panel is one of 2 federal agencies that must approve Trump's plans for the ballroom. The National Capital Planning Commission, which has jurisdiction over construction and major renovation of government buildings in the region, is also reviewing the project. Members of the Fine Arts Commission originally had been scheduled to discuss and vote on the design after a follow-up presentation by the architect, and had planned to vote on final approval at next month's meeting, but after the 6-0 vote on the design, the panel's chairman, Rodney Mims Cook Jr., unexpectedly made another motion to vote on final approval. 6 of the 7 commissioners, all appointed by the Republican president in January, voted once more in favor. Commissioner James McCreary did not participate in the discussion or the votes because he was the initial architect on the project before Trump replaced him. The ballroom will be built on the site of the former East Wing, which Trump had demolished in October with little public notice. That drew an outcry from lawmakers, historians, and preservationists who argued that the president should not have taken that step until the 2 federal agencies and Congress had reviewed and approved the project and the public had a chance to provide comment. The 90,000 square foot ballroom would be nearly twice the size of the White House, which is 55,000 square feet, and would accommodate about 1,000 people, Trump said. In the East Room, currently the largest room in the White House, can fit just over 200 people at most. Grandiose plans for that ballroom.
Yay. Well, you're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, February 20th of 2026, on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Don Williams
and JJ Patek.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
And we're back. We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
J.J. Patek
and Don Williams. Turning to the local news, John Harris, news staff reporter, tells us that Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center is planning to almost double its community outreach and engagement center in the Fruit Belt neighborhood through an expansion supported by state funding. Speaking yesterday morning at the Outreach Center at 907 Michigan Avenue, State Senator April Baskin and Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes announced $3 million in state funding, $2 million secured by the Senate in the current fiscal year, and $1 million committed by the Assembly to go toward the development of a new wing at the center. Construction on the new wing, called the Hope Center, that's Health, Outreach, and Prevention Excellence, scheduled to begin in September and expected to take 10 to 12 months to complete. The expansion will add about 4,000 square feet to the 5,590 square foot center. Dr. Candace Johnson, President and CEO of Roswell Park, said the total project cost is $4 million. The Roswell Park Alliance Foundation is currently seeking support from donors to secure the final $1 million to complete the project. Our vision is a $4 million vision, and so we have a lot of philanthropic efforts that are underway to try to bridge that gap, Johnson said. Roswell Park opened the Community Outreach and Engagement Center in October 2023, a $4.7 million project that received $2 million in state funds and $1 million in contributions from the Roswell Park Alliance Foundation. The project centered on the rehab and reuse of a 1,300 square foot home that was built in 1878. The center, designed by Young and Wright Architectural and built by Telco Construction, also added a wing that includes floor-to-ceiling glass and a window-lined corridor. Thinking back to the development of the center, the reuse of an existing structure was critical to gaining Peoples-Stokes' support. I never imagined that my vision of keeping the building in place would end up being Dr. Johnson's vision of pouring into this community in the way that this facility had done, Peoples-Stokes said yesterday. The center is home to services focused on advancing health equity and bolstering health outcomes in Western New York through cancer awareness, educational programs, navigation of cancer screening, financial wellness programming, and space for community gatherings. Critically, the center bolsters the community outreach and engagement work that Roswell Park performs as part of its National Cancer Institute designation. Since it opened, the center has welcomed more than 16,000 community members and hosted more than 800 events, of which approximately 500 were led directly by community partners. It's far exceeded any of our expectations, Johnson said. I mean, we have so many people that would just walk in here. Maybe their loved one is having surgery at Roswell, and they're too scared to walk into that big, scary old hospital. You can't blame them for that, but they can come in here and feel warmth. The benefit of this place is immeasurable. But Roswell Park needed more space at the Outreach Center, which led to discussions with Peoples-Stokes and Baskin about the potential for state funding. Baskin said it was a tall ask for a freshman member to approach Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins to talk about a $2 million funding request, but it was made easier because Baskin was able to point to the work being done at Roswell Park. They are saving lives. I can personally say they have helped to save my father's life within the last 60 days, Baskin said. He is now going through radiation, and they caught his cancer in enough time to get him through radiation so he can lead a healthy life and that me and my children have him longer. And so I know firsthand, not just as a state advocate, but as a beneficiary of this community, how important Roswell is. So I asked, and she supported it.
Another note, different hospital, decision to reduce beds in rehab unit causes an uproar. This is from John Harris. Mallory Andrzejak knows the importance of the medical rehabilitation unit at Buffalo General Medical Center. Her mother, Karen Hines, suffered a stroke in September and spent months there where staff helped her recover through intensive rehabilitation therapy for hours each day. Buffalo General saved my mother's life, and the medical rehab unit at Buffalo General saved my mother's quality of life, said Andrzejak, a nurse practitioner in the neighboring Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. Andrzejak was one of many people who spoke at a public meeting Thursday morning held to gather comments on a plan to reduce Buffalo General's medical rehabilitation unit from 34 to 16 beds later this year. In an auditorium at Buffalo General, more than 80 people crammed in to make sure their voices were heard in front of 5 Kaleida administrators. Many, like Andrzejak, spoke against a planned reduction of beds, which requires approval from the state health department. Most who spoke were Buffalo General employees, union members, patients, or loved ones of people who have benefited from the rehabilitation unit services. Many of those who spoke urged Buffalo General's operator, Kaleida Health, to reevaluate its decision and find other ways to trim costs. The planned elimination of 18 beds in the unit would result in a layoff of 22 positions. This is the latest measure announced by Kaleida as it accelerates a $200 million statewide improvement plan in response to the federal One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is projected to reduce Medicaid spending by about $1 trillion nationwide by 2034. In addition to the planned elimination of 18 medical rehabilitation beds, which would be repurposed into inpatient capacity, Kaleida, which also announced closures for its Millard Fillmore Surgery Center in Amherst, 2 Buffalo Therapy Service clinics, the Ear, Nose, and Throat Center at Buffalo General, and its Family Planning Center at 1100 Main Street. On Tuesday, Kaleida announced plans to close inpatient, emergency, and long-term care service at Bradford Regional Medical Center in Pennsylvania and transition the hospital to an outpatient care center. In a recent statement, Kaleida said reducing the medical rehabilitation unit's bed count from 34 to 16 would be more in line with what the average consensus has been and is forecasted to be in the future. Patients who required MRU-level care beyond the remaining 16 beds have access to several other MRUs within the community, ensuring continuity of care, Kaleida said. Hospital medical rehabilitation units serve patients who are considered medically complex and need intensive rehabilitation, as well as quick access to acute medical services. According to Kaleida's website, the medical rehabilitation unit provides round-the-clock rehabilitation, nursing, and patients participate in intensive rehabilitation therapy up to 3 hours each day, 6 days a week. Medical rehabilitation units operate under the direction of a physician specializing in rehabilitation care. The unit, which was fully renovated less than 3 years ago, has touched the lives of many Western New Yorkers who have suffered from strokes, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, brain and spinal tumors, neurological disorders, and cardiac cases. Dr. Kathy O'Leary, an anesthesiologist from Roswell Park, suffered a life-altering stroke in October of 2019 and was rushed to Gates Vascular Institution. After she got out of the intensive care unit, she received services from the medical rehabilitation unit as she started a long recovery. Her husband, Michael Collins, said Thursday the unit helped her progress, but the care could have been even better than it was, so to him the idea that Kaleida is shrinking the unit's resources doesn't make any sense. The idea that you're going to do less to me is just insanity, Collins said. Many who spoke Thursday also questioned whether the other 2 medical rehabilitation units in the area at Erie County Medical Center and Kenmore Mercy Hospital have enough capacity to make up for the elimination of 18 beds at Buffalo General. According to Communications Workers of America Local 1168, which represents workers at Buffalo General Medical Rehabilitation Unit at Buffalo General, serves an average of 26 to 29 patients per day. So reducing the unit to 16 beds, the union said, would leave some patient without access to that level of care. Dr. Kevin Gibson, Director of Rehabilitation Services at Catholic Health, attended the hearing Thursday and spoke about the importance of medical rehabilitation unit services. He said if Kaleida goes forward with the planned reduction at Buffalo General Unit, Catholic Health does have capacity at our MRU. In a follow-up email on Thursday, Catholic Health officials said Kenmore Mercy recently renovated and expanded its medical rehabilitation unit to 30 beds and all new equipment. That unit at Kenmore Mercy is accredited for its stroke specialty program and was recently awarded a 3-year reaccreditation by the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. For Angie Jacques, she wants to know that patients will continue to have the same access to medical rehabilitation unit services like her mother did. When her mother, Karen Hines, started in the unit, she needed a medical lift system to move around. Now Hines is at home with Andre Zak and is able to get around with a Hemi walker, a lightweight one-handed mobility aid. So Andre Zak advised Kaleida Administrator Thursday, please think of the Karens of this world because they deserve access to care.
In the city, Justin Sandell, news staff reporter, tells us that Mayor Sean Ryan yesterday vowed to make the owners of the former St. Anne's Catholic Church school building pay for all costs related to the restoration or demolition of the fire-damaged historic building. Ryan was joined by administration officials, preservationists, and structural engineers in the city's Broadway Fillmore neighborhood in front of the building, which was damaged in a 4-alarm fire last month. He said his office has been in contact with representatives of Muna Center of Buffalo Incorporated, the building's owners, to try to work with them on a plan. The city estimates the cost of demolition to be $2 million. We're going to be out of the business of demolishing or repairing privately owned structures at the taxpayer expense, Ryan said. Buffalo Fire Department crews were called to the former school building on Emsley Street, adjacent to the school church building on Broadway Avenue, about 11 p.m., January 15th. Crews battled the blaze through frigid temperatures until 3:45 a.m. the next day before bringing it under control. Deputy Mayor Thomas Baines said he has been in contact with members of the organization that owns the building and that he laid out to them that they will be fully responsible for any costs associated with demolition or restoration of the building. What they suggested to us is that they have a robust community and they intend to raise the funds to try to either, one, partially demo the building, and then, two, try to get it back in some decent repair to do what they want to do, he said. Calls and emails to the organization yesterday afternoon were not immediately returned. Baines said there is an open line of communication between officials from the Department of Permits and Inspection Services and the owners, and that the city will pursue court enforcement if the owners do not meet timelines or follow through with their plans. My objective is to make sure that there's a future for the site, Baines said. An emergency demolition order was halted after Ryan administration officials sought the advice of the City Preservation Board and brought in structural engineers to assess the structural integrity of the building. Gwen Howard, the chair of the Preservation Board, said officials there have been in contact with state officials and confirmed that the owners are still eligible for preservation tax credits if they keep the exterior of the building. Those tax credits could make a restoration project of the building possible. And the fire damage to the interior may allow the group to clear out the inside of the building and rebuild the floors and structural elements while still qualifying for state and federal tax credits, allowing for portions of the building to be saved, she said. There's still a lot of hope, Howard said. Well, we'll see.
I got a little tired of that. My sister used to teach there for years. So. Well, Dixon declares he'll run to replace Burke in the Assembly. This is from Robert Gavin, the Albany bureau chief. 7 years ago, Gary Dixon became the first Republican in 50 years to win an election for West Seneca Town Supervisor. Facing term limits at the end of the next year, Dixon is setting his sights on another seat occupied by a Democrat, the state's 142nd Assembly District. On Wednesday, Dixon, 67, announced he will run to replace Assembly member Patrick Burke, a Democrat from Orchard Park and a former Erie County legislator, elected to represent the district in 2020. It includes South Buffalo, the Lovejoy and Fillmore sections of Buffalo, Lackawanna, West Seneca, and Orchard Park. Democrats outnumber the combined total of Republicans and conservatives in the district by 15,798 votes. 2 years ago, Burke, now 41, defeated Mark Pryor, the Republican challenger seeking to replace him, by 817 votes. Dixon highlighted his past successes in a Democratic voting area. I've accomplished a lot of what I set out to do, Dixon said. I think I still have some energy and drive in me to try to work things out at the state level. Dixon, a retired FBI agent and U.S. Army veteran, became the first Republican supervisor of West Seneca in 50 years when he won the office in 2019 to succeed outgoing town supervisor Sheila Megan. When Brian Higgins stepped down from his congressional seat, Dixon faced off against Tim Kennedy for the seat in 2024 and was defeated by more than 2-to-1 margin in the heavily Democratic Buffalo-based district. Due to term limits in West Seneca, Dixon must leave office at the end of his term next year. Dixon said he believes the town's finances are in good shape, that the town is more transparent, and that economic development, such as transforming the long vacant former Seneca Mall site into a shopping center, is going well. He said he gets calls regularly over issues such as state roads or electrical costs that he has no control over, but which he could tackle as a state lawmaker. Democrats outnumber Republicans 103 to 47 at the Assembly, which makes it difficult for Republican lawmakers to get their bills out of legislative committee, let alone into law, outside of highly parochial or non-controversial proposals. Members of the majority historically have access to more budget funding for their districts than their minority counterparts. Dixon was undeterred. Even if you're in the majority, how much influence do you think you, especially at budget time, that backbencher in the Democratic Party has been the process? Dixon asked, noting that he was making a general comment and not referring to Burke. I don't think they have much. Dixon said the iniquities of the system are wrong, regardless of which party is in the minority. He drew a difference between powers that be in the Democratic-run Assembly in the 142nd District. When I look at Albany, it seems like everything is being driven by New York City progressives, and the fact is the majority of Assembly members aren't in New York City, Dixon said. If they were looking out for the interests of the public, why would they go along with New York City progressives? Asked about Dixon's campaign, Burke said, looking forward to discussing the issues and comparing our records. I can't wait. Should be interesting.
Indeed. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. At 16 minutes past the hour, it's time to turn to the sports pages, and we have some exciting news.
Yay!
In Milan, Megan Keller backhanded in a shot, 4:07 into overtime, and the United States won its third Olympic gold medal in women's hockey.
It was a great game.
Beating Canada 2-1 at the Milan Cortina Games yesterday evening, to close another thrilling chapter in one of sport's most heated rivalries. American captain Hillary Knight, in her fifth and final Olympics, forced overtime by tipping in Layla Edwards' shot from the blue line with 2:04 remaining. The goal was the 15th of her her Olympic career. And third,
these days is added
politics. 33rd point to break the U.S. record in both categories, with the sides playing 3-on-3. Which is what they do in overtime in the Olympics. Keller broke up the left wing and pushed past Claire Thompson. Driving to the net, the U.S. assistant captain got off a backhander that beat Anne-Renee Tepien over her right pad. I'm lost for words, Keller said. This is an incredible feeling. I love these girls so much. This group deserves it. Just the effort and the faith that we kept through this 4-year journey is something very special. The U.S. previously won gold at the 1998 Nagano Games, the first to feature women's hockey, and in 2018 in Pyeongchang. Canada, which won the other 5 gold medals, settled for its third silver. Erin Frankel stopped 30 shots for the U.S. Kristen O'Neill scored a shorthanded goal for Canada, and Tepien finished with 31 saves. This was the 7th of 12 Olympic meetings between the rivals to be decided by 1 goal, and the third to go past regulation. Canada overcame a late 2-1 deficit to beat the U.S. 3-2 on Marie-Philippe Poulin's overtime goal at the 2014 Sochi Games, and the U.S. won 3-2 in 2018 when Jocelyn Lamoureux scored in a shootout. Though the final couldn't have been closer, the Americans were dominant in Milan, going 7-0 and outscoring their opponents by a combined 33-2. Canada pushed the U.S. to the brink just 9 days after it was beaten 5-0 by the Americans in the preliminary round. O'Neill's goal, 54 seconds into the second period, ended the Americans' shutout streak of 5 hours and 52 minutes and 17 seconds, taking to the second period of a 5-1 opening win over Czechia. The U.S. had not trailed in the tournament. As fans alternated chants of USA and Canada, Canada was within grasp of its sixth gold medal. The U.S. pulled Frankel for an extra attacker with 2:23 left, and 19 seconds later, Knight converted. Edwards slapped a low shot at the net that Knight tipped in through her legs and past Debian. This was the first Olympics for Edwards, the first black woman to represent the U.S. in hockey. We knew we had it in us, and Hill came up with that tying goal. Keller said, I think a lot of belief in our group. We wanted to play to win. For the defending Olympic champion Canadians, this was considered a last hurrah for their aging core led by Marie-Philippe Poulin, Captain Clutch, and her teammates showed resolve by pushing the Americans to the brink. Canada hardly looked overmatched in the first period, and O'Neill opened the scoring by capping a 2-on-1 shorthanded break early in the second. Canada kept pressing its attack and had several chances in overtime. A minute before Keller's goal, Sarah Fillier moved up the right wing only to have her shot stopped by Frankel with the puck landing in the crease. The Americans extended their winning streak against Canada to 8. It began with 2 wins at the World Championships in April, including the gold medal game. The U.S. then swept a 4-game exhibition series by a combined margin of 26-7. The U.S., under coach John Wroblewski, revamped much of its roster from the team that lost 3-2 in Canada at the 2022 Beijing Games. This team featured just 11 returning players and 7 who are still in college. Canadians fell to the American team this year. Yeah. 2-1 in overtime.
So that was a hard-fought game. I was out and they had the TV on, and you couldn't have a conversation. They were all yelling at the screen. But that was a hard-fought game. Well, Luke Conan focuses on Sabres' run to the playoffs. This is from Rachel Lindsay, the News Sports reporter. Josh Nolan felt the nerves Wednesday as he watched the United States men's hockey team defeat Sweden in overtime in a quarterfinal game in the Winter Olympics in Milan. The Buffalo Sabres left wing kept a specific eye on teammates Tage Thompson, playing for the United States, and Rasmus Dahlin, playing for Sweden. Every game except for the first game was really tight, Dolan said, of the Olympic quarterfinals. The Canadian guys were pretty nervous in that room watching that game against Czechia. Then sitting on the couch at home and you're cheering for Raz and those guys with Sweden, but at the same time you wanted the U.S. to pull through, and thankfully they did. Doan and his teammates have paid close attention to this year's Winter Olympics in the men's hockey. This is the first year since 2014 that National Hockey League players have participated in the games. Some players have sisters playing for the women's national teams, as with Josh Dunn's case. A sister played for the United States and a girlfriend who plays for Canada. Others keep a continued watch for teammates and friends playing in the international tournament. Doan is well familiar with international competition in hockey. He helped the United States win a gold medal in May at the IIHF. Let's get that straight there. IIHF World Championship in Stockholm as Thompson scored the game-winning goal in overtime to lift the United States to a 1-0 win against Switzerland and to his first gold medal in the IIHF World Championship since 1933. Now Thompson is helping the United States pursue its first Olympic gold medal in men's hockey since 1980. Many remember it as a miracle on ice. The United States beat the former Soviet Union in the tournament and then defeated Finland for the gold medal.
I still remember Al Michaels shouting, "Do you believe in miracles?" Something.
Something like that. The last time the United States played for a gold medal in men's hockey was in 2010. Canada beat the United States 3-2 in Vancouver as Pittsburgh captain Sidney Crosby beat former Sabres goaltender Ryan Miller in overtime to win the game. The United States faces Slovakia in an Olympic semifinal at 3:10 p.m. Friday in Milan. The winner will face the winner of the Finland-Canada game, scheduled for 10:40 a.m. Friday for the gold medal at 8:10 a.m. Sunday. It's good to see the growth, Doan said, of the United States' progress in men's and women's hockey, particularly in the Winter Olympics. The women have been unbelievable this year, and they tend to do that. Yes, we do. In the past couple of years, they've been finding their stride, seeing the men now compete and get a chance to play in a semifinal game. That game will be huge. Hopefully they get a chance to play for gold again. Doan may be a little conflicted about the possibility of a United States-Canada matchup for the gold medal. He was born in Arizona. His parents, Shane and Andrea, are from Canada. His grandparents still live in Canada. Doesn't matter what sport I'm in, I'm hearing about it from my grandparents or my cousins, Doan said. They're all Canadians, so they're all cheering for Canada. They're probably the more nerve-wracking part for me is not wanting the U.S. to lose and getting 800 texts right from them chirping me. But I got a lot of faith in the U.S. this year to finish it off, and hopefully I can give it back to them a little bit. Well, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, Rachel Lindsay reports that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen spent a few days dwelling on what could have been. The Buffalo Sabres goaltender sustained a lower body injury in the first period of a 7-4 win at Toronto on January 27th. A week later, the Sabres announced Luukkonen would not play for Finland at the Winter Olympics, and Luukkonen was placed on injured reserve. The first couple of days when I kind of knew that it's not happening, it was kind of, I don't know what the right word is in English, but kind of devastating to know that you can't make it, Luukkonen said. It's something that's been in the back of my mind for a long time. But once he looked at the timing of his injury, the process of recovery, and the amount of the extra time off due to the NHL's Olympic break, which runs through February 24th, and the fact that the Sabres have 25 regular season games still to play, he changed his frame of mind. He and his teammates with the Sabres are ready to chase some consequential goals when the NHL season resumes next week. Luukkonen returned to practice with the Sabres on yesterday, at Lecom Harbor Center, less than 4 weeks after he sustained the injury. The injury itself was a disappointment for Luukkonen. The Olympic break, though, wasn't. Instead, it was a remedy. He took the time off to visit with family and friends in Finland and admitted that he faced some of the questions of how could this happen so close to the Olympics. He also had more time to recover from the lower body injury, and rest and rehabilitation became a means to a different purpose, helping the Sabres earn a playoff berth for the first time in 15 years. Something really special for everybody here, Luukkonen said. Of course we want to make it. The whole city wants to make it. It keeps you really, really motivated to go back to playing. The Sabres are 32-19-6. They resume this season 7 p.m. Wednesday at New Jersey, and they are in the first wild card spot in Eastern Conference with 70 points, 1 point ahead of Boston, and 5 points ahead of Columbus and Washington, each with 65. He's been a huge part of our team this year, left wing Josh Doan said of Luukkonen, who is 11-7-2 with a 2.73 goals against average and a .903 save percentage in 21 games this season. When he's on, he's one of the best goalies in the league. We have a lot of trust in all our goalies, but seeing him back on the ice is really nice. Luukkonen is keeping an eye on Finland's men's hockey team, which faces Canada at 10:40 a.m. today. I don't know if that's Milan time. I'm guessing that's a Milan time, which means it's already over.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's in an Olympic semifinal in Milan, and the winning team advances to the gold medal game at 8:10 a.m. Sunday, and the losing team plays in the bronze medal game at 2:40 p.m. tomorrow. We've been playing well as a team here, and I was really confident that it would have been a great chance for me to be part of the Olympic team, Luukkonen said. They're playing really well, and I'm really happy for them, but it would be really special to be a part of that. Back in Buffalo, though, The pursuit of a chase for a berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs has kept Luukkonen positive as he has gotten closer to his return into the lineup. What happened? You can't change that, Luukkonen said. You kind of go through it for a couple days, and then you start to look forward. You start to be positive about the fact that you have a huge playoff push coming here. I'm really happy that I'm part of the team here, and we have something special going on. To be healthy for that, again, I think that's what's mentally gotten me through it, too.
Who are we playing? Sweden?
The article wasn't talking about that. I don't remember.
Apparently, we won something 2-1 against Sweden. I don't know who that was. Well, anyway, we'll move on to Liu delivers the gold for the United States. Alyssa Liu delivered the U.S.'s first women's figure skating Olympic medal in 24 years, performing a nearly flawless free skate on Thursday night in glittering gold dress to upstage Japanese rivals Kaori Sakamoto and Ami Nakai at the Milan Cortina Games. The 20-year-old from the San Francisco Bay Area could walk away from the sport after the Beijing Games after 4 years ago, only to launch a remarkable comeback, finished with a career-best 226.79 points. Nakai and Sakamoto, skating right behind her, each made a mistake on a combination sequence that made a difference in the medals. Sakamoto scored 224.90 points to earn a silver to go with her bronze from Beijing. Nakai finished third with 219.16 points. The moment Nakai's score was read after the final programs of the night, the U.S. teammate Amber Glenn jumped up onto the kiss and cry stand and raised Liu's hand in triumph. Liu sheepishly turned and applauded the 17-year-old Nakai, who raced over and hugged her. It was the first individual gold medal for an American woman since 2002, when Sarah Hughes stood atop the podium in Salt Lake City, and it was a second gold for Liu at the Milan Cortina Games. She helped the Americans win the team gold. The medal blended right into her gold sequin dress, only its blue ribbon standing out, and is seen to be the perfect complement to the gold stripes through her dark brown hair, which are meant to resemble the growth rings on a tree. Liu has done a whole lot of growing up over the years. She was the youngest U.S. champion ever when she won the first back-to-back titles at 13 years old. But after finishing sixth at the Beijing Games, Liu was so burned out that she abruptly retired. She spent the next 2 years doing bucket list things like climbing up to the base camp at Mount Everest, and enrolling at UCLA, where she's studying psychology. It was after a skiing trip when Liu felt the same adrenaline rush that came with skating as she contemplated her comeback. But this time she would be skating on her terms, more happy-go-lucky and self-assured than he had been as a childhood prodigy. Even during the warm-ups Thursday, she skated with a grin on her face, never showing any signs of pressure. Meanwhile, Glenn finished in fifth place behind Mon Chiba of Japan, a stunning rebound from her disastrous short program Tuesday night. Glenn's season-best free skate gave a score of 214.91 points, and it just about landed her on the podium as well. Glenn pumped her fist and fought back tears when her score was read, and then she took a seat in the new leader's chair. She wound up sitting there for quite a while. Delia Petrosyan, the 18-year-old Russian competing as a neutral athlete at Milan Cortina, tried the only quadruple jump during the women's competition, but fell on the quad-toe loop. She was clean the rest of the way, but the points Petrosyan lost on that fall ended up leaving her less than a half point behind Glenn in the leader's chair. It was Chiba, the ninth skater to follow the three-time Olympic champ, who finally took over first place. Well, that didn't last long with Liu next on ice. The reigning world champion, that title was a first for an American in a mere 19 points. 19 years, by the way, was perfect from her opening triple flip to her closing combination sequence. As the last bits of Donna Summer's rendition of MacArthur Park close and Aurora fans fill the void, the carefree Leo gave a casual flip of her ponytail as if to say, so what? Her coaches, Philip DiGiuliano and Massimo Scali, were a little bit more rambunctious. They punched the air and gave each other a big hug before heading over to greet their star pupil when she stepped off the ice to await her score. That score ultimately would give her an Olympic title and end a long drought for the American women. Well,
I've never seen a skater that looked so happy every second she was on the ice.
you need more of that.
She's awfully pretty, too. She's just a sweetheart. She did an interview. She's humble and, yeah, well. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. And at 33 minutes past the hour, it's time to turn from the sports pages to get some advice from Eric. Dear Eric, my wife and I have been married for more than 40 years. She's great, but a recurring point of friction and really anger on my part is over the dishwashing and laundry at our house. She'll let them accumulate beyond what I can stand. So, long ago, I began just doing all my own laundry and cleaning up the kitchen. Most spouses, I think, would be happy with that, right? But as I am doing either of those tasks, she breaks in with lectures about how I am not doing things right. You must put the detergent in before the clothes. You're not loading the dishwasher right. You need to let that pot soak before you wash it. And on and on and on. Really? I'm doing these things, and you are criticizing my methods? So, what is her problem? What is in her mind when she does that? How do I get her to stop the criticism? I'm not trying. There's this frustrated husband. Dear husband, I'm not trying to sound flippant, but the fact is I don't know what's in your wife's mind. She does, though, so you should ask her. But maybe not while you're loading the dishwasher or unloading the dryer. You both have mismatched expectations about household chores. Not just when they get done or how, but whose responsibility they are. For instance, you write that you started doing your laundry out of frustration. Are you also doing hers, or do you leave that for her? If you are washing her clothes as well, are they coming out how she expects? There aren't any wrong answers here, per se. Every couple creates their own marriage. But it sounds like a lot of the conflict that you're having comes from an expectation that you have, which she's not meeting, and an expectation that she has, which you're not meeting. A conversation at a neutral time can help tease that out. Start by asking each other what an ideal division of household labor would look like. Ask what are the chores that you would like to do, and what are the chores that you would like to never do again. See where you match. Once you've started to sketch out a division of labor that works for both of you and is rooted in communication, you can start to talk about the friction points. But lead with curiosity. You might ask her what bothers her about the way you load the dishwasher, for instance. You might also decide to try out her way.
Okay.
I wish them luck.
Good luck, yeah.
Dear Eric, I am a 64-year-old woman and have had double knee and double hip replacements. I'm a slow walker and have mobility issues, but I'm okay. What I find tiresome is I'm continually getting advice from people about different treatments, meds, PT, how to walk, blah, blah. I'm sick of it. Like I haven't thought about it or haven't done it already. I know people are well-meaning and trying to help, but the unsolicited advice never stops. It's hard not to get angry. I end up feeling very defensive and saying something like, I'm fine, thank you. Any other polite boundary suggestions? I'm fine, okay? Dear fine. Depending on the relationship, you may choose to be more or less terse, but don't let an obligation to politeness keep you from clarity. If you're getting feedback from strangers, it's fine to say, I know you mean well, but I've got great doctors and we've got a plan I'm confident in. People tend to be insistent about their anecdotal experience, particularly when it comes to medical advice. This isn't a bad thing when asked for or welcome, but everybody's different, and one person's miracle cure might be another person's placebo. So, if strangers press, it's time to shut it down. I said, no thank you. Your body and your health are not open items up for public debate. When you tell someone what your boundary is and they ignore it, you'll be best served by drawing a clear line. Similarly, with friends, you may want to be proactive. I've been getting a lot of advice about my health lately. I'm getting a little full. I really trust my doctors to guide me. So if you've got something to ask, please ask me. If you've got something to say, please ask me if I'm open to a suggestion first. Then, if they offer advice unprompted, remind them that you need them to ask if you're open to it first. Ideally, a friend who cares about you will understand and adjust. But you may find some people still struggle with asking permission. With those friends, the loving, healthy, and I would argue polite thing to do is to set up an even firmer boundary. If your health comes up, conversation is over. Yeah, well, okay. Not that it's a business of any stranger, but she's had double knee and double hip replacements, and the strangers don't know that. So
really?
My responsibility. You don't know what I'm going through.
Yeah, really. Well, this is on the front page again from Sandra Tan and Mike Petro. Leaders will reset workers at stadium in wake of graffiti. Construction workers are returning to the Buffalo Bills Stadium site today for the first time since graffiti was found Monday morning that ruined permanent fixtures and finishes inside the building. But they aren't headed straight to work. Instead, all workers are being called to a special meeting early in the morning where they will be warned about consequences for anyone who inflicts further damage to the property. Obviously, there's zero tolerance for any derogatory things toward any person or anything like that, said Erie County Public Works Commissioner William Geary. So I think it's just basically a reset with the workforce. The vandalism that shut down construction this week at the new stadium was done to luxury suites on the west side of the facility, Geary said. Crude remarks were sprayed on granite countertops, tile, and flooring over the weekend. The 200-level suites were 90% done, but the porous finishes weren't sealed yet, so there's no way to salvage them. It's really juvenile, Geary said, relaying information that the defacement ranged from scribbles to pornographic references. The damage is estimated at $150,000, officials said, which would likely need to be absorbed or covered by insurance for Gilbane Turner, the stadium's general contractor. This isn't the first time someone has left unwanted messages and graffiti scrawled on parts of the $2 billion stadium property since construction began. In the past, site managers have found minor defacement to stadium property, Geary said, such as someone pulling out a Sharpie and leaving a scribble, a few words, or a first name on a temporary wooden structure like a 2x4 that would serve as a stair railing or support and would be removed when permanent fixtures were installed. But damaging final fixtures and finishes could not be overlooked. The current priority for stadium managers is spreading the message that deliberate damage to stadium property will not be tolerated. At 6:30 a.m., all stadium workers are being gathered in the seating area of the main bowl to be briefed on what happened, why it won't be tolerated, and what consequences workers will face if they are caught. That needs to stop, said Paul Brown, president of the Buffalo and Niagara Building and Construction Trades Council. It's totally ridiculous what happened. I don't even understand why someone didn't stop the person who did it. I mean, somebody must have seen them do it. Brown said the vandalism is a black eye for a project that's otherwise brought positive attention to Western New York. The project has shined a light on the work of the trades in the union, in the region, as well as bringing many companies to Buffalo. Whoever did this probably did it on Sunday, he said. When workers came in on Monday, they were sent home. I hate it when this stuff happens because you work hard. If there's 100 or there's 1,500 guys out there, there's probably 1,497 of them doing a good job, but it gets ruined all because everyone is now talking about this, said Brown, who added that trade unions have added about 500 members since the stadium project got going in 2024. It's $2 billion worth of work that's being done, he said, and now everybody's talking about these clowns. Gilbane Turner has issued a $100,000 reward to anyone with information leading to the arrest and conviction of the vandal. The reward announcement is an indication that finding the responsible party may be more of a challenge than first thought, even though the site is well secured and clearance is needed to get into the areas that were vandalized. No one can get past the entrance gate to get to the construction site without having their ID tag barcode scanned. That includes not only the person's name, but the company, organization, or construction trade they belong to. We suspended work because the people who came to this job site deserve to work in an environment that reflects respect and professionalism, Gilbane Turner said in a statement. When that standard is violated, we address it, and it takes time to reset expectations. The stadium project has private security on site and some surveillance cameras strategically positioned in different areas, Geary said. But so far, the culprits eluded all identification efforts. At a news conference for an unrelated event Tuesday, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz said, "What's going on there is not funny and is costing some money to do work at the stadium because they had to redo a lot of work that had been previously done." Investigators have a list of names of who the culprit could be. While the work was likely done over the weekend, when the stadium was staffed with much smaller crew and authorities have the list of everyone who worked then, that still leaves more than 300 people who could have done it, Geary said. Those 300 employees that were on site at that time frame are all being questioned, he said. Brown said he does not know what impact the work shutdown will have on union members getting paid for the work, but he said many of them have been working overtime and earning extra income. To better safeguard the building, Gilbane Turner has spent the last few days hardwiring and activating the permanent cameras located throughout the facility, Geary said. In addition, some limited exterior work, such as the parking lots and lighting, were allowed to resume. Sheriff Gon Garcia said in a statement that Sheriff's Office Investigative Service Division is investigating the graffiti, but he would not comment further. Geary said the Sheriff's Office spent 3 hours on site when the graffiti was discovered and processed the scene. Poloncarz said authorities are reviewing available security video footage as part of the investigation. Gilbane Turner said it's been supported by trade contractors, unions, local officials, and law enforcement during the investigation, but the actions of those responsible have violated the company's trust and zero-tolerance policy on graffiti. The response reinforces what we know to be true. The overwhelming majority of people on the project are committed to maintaining a welcoming and professional work environment, the company said. Once the stadium is back in full construction mode, work will continue on tasks such as drywall installation, tiling, feature installations, bringing in food service equipment, and finishing the floors and ceiling, Geary said. Much of the current work is being done on the 300 level, he said. The county is among the parties responsible for inspecting hundreds of remaining contractor projects on the site while it still owns building and property before it is transferred to the state. Work has been going on nearly around the clock, with 3 shifts working 7 days a week as part of the push to complete the stadium in time to host its first events this summer. As of December 31st, the stadium project is 85% complete, according to a third-party forensic analysis. With only 5 months until a substantial completion of the stadium is expected to occur, the project already has a little wiggle room after weather and other delays put it weeks behind in some areas as of last year, according to records released by the state. Construction was also temporarily paused in 2024 after a report of potential hate symbol discovered on site. Since then, the team has been working to ensure the stadium could be far enough along by July. The county would then turn the keys over to the state, which would become the new stadium leaseholder. Geary said he remains optimistic that despite the 4-day delay, the stadium may still be done a month ahead of schedule. There's certain areas that are ahead of schedule, he said. There's certain areas, like I said, that are almost 100% complete, and then there's other areas where, when the workforce really has to focus on, maybe 85% complete. So I remain optimistic that we're going to hit our June 1st date.
No, we'll see. In Washington, Trump says Board of Peace members have pledged $9 billion toward Gaza relief. President Trump announced yesterday at the inaugural Board of Peace meeting that 9 members have agreed to pledge $7 billion towards a Gaza relief package, and 5 countries have agreed to deploy troops as part of an international stabilization force for the war-battered Palestinian territory. Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania made pledges to send troops for a Gaza stabilization force, while Egypt and Jordan committed to train police. Troops will initially be deployed to Rafah, a major population center where the U.S. administration hopes to first focus reconstruction efforts. The countries making pledges for reconstruction are Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, and Kuwait, Trump said. Every dollar spent is an investment in stability and the hope of new and harmonious region, Trump said in thanking the donors. He added, the Board of Peace is showing how a better future can be built right here in this room. The dollars pledged, while significant, represent a small fraction of the estimated $70 billion needed to rebuild the Palestinian territory decimated after 2 years of war between Israel and Hamas. Trump also announced the U.S. was pledging $10 billion for the board, but didn't specify what the money will be used for. It was also not clear where the U.S. money would come from, a sizable pledge that would need to be authorized by Congress. Major General Jasper Jeffers The leader of the newly created International Stabilization Force said the plans call for 12,000 police and 20,000 soldiers for Gaza. With these first steps, we help bring the security that Gaza needs for a future of prosperity and enduring peace, Jeffers said. The board was initiated as part of Trump's 20-point peace plan to end the conflict in Gaza. But since the October ceasefire, Trump's vision for the board has morphed. He wants to have it an even more ambitious remit, one that will not only complete the Herculean task of bringing lasting peace between Israel and Hamas, but will also help resolve conflicts around the globe. But the Gaza ceasefire remains fragile, and Trump's expanded vision for the board has triggered fears the U.S. president is looking to create a rival to the United Nations. Trump, pushing back against the criticism, said the creation of his board would help make the UN viable in the future. Someday I won't be here, the United Nations will be, Trump said. I think it's going to be much stronger, and the Board of Peace is going to almost be looking over the United Nations and making sure it runs properly. Even as Trump spoke of the gathering as a triumph that would help bring a more persistent peace to the Middle East, he sent new warnings to Iran. Tensions are high between the United States and Iran as Trump has ordered one of the largest U.S. military buildups in the region in decades. One aircraft carrier group is already in the region and another is on the way. Trump has warned Tehran it will face American military action if it does not denuclearize, give up ballistic missiles, and halt funding to extremist proxy groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. We have to make a meaningful deal. Otherwise, bad things happen, Trump said. Nearly 50 countries and the European Union sent officials to Thursday's meeting. Germany, Italy, Norway, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom are among more than a dozen countries that have not joined the board but that took part as observers. Most countries sent high-level officials, but a few leaders, including Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto, Argentine President Javier Milei, and Hungarian President Viktor Orban, traveled to Washington for the meeting. Almost everybody's accepted, and the ones that haven't will be, Trump offered. And some are playing a little cute. It doesn't work. You can't play cute with me. The UN Security Council held a high-level meeting Wednesday on the ceasefire deal and Israel's efforts to expand control in the West Bank. The UN session in New York was originally scheduled for yesterday, but was moved up after Trump announced the board's meeting for the same date, and it became clear that it would complicate travel plans for diplomats planning to attend to both. Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin told reporters earlier this week that at the international level, it should above all be the UN that manages these crisis situations. Official after official used their speaking turns to heap praise on Trump for his ability to end conflicts around the world. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called him the savior of South Asia, while others said that years of U.S. foreign policy efforts by his predecessor failed to do what Trump has done in the past year. Turkish Foreign Affairs Minister Hakan Fidan said Trump and others gathered for the meeting deserved thanks for their collective efforts on Gaza. But Fidan, who said Turkey was also prepared to contribute troops to the stabilization force, cautioned that the situation remains precarious. The humanitarian situation remains fragile, and ceasefire violations continue to occur, Fidan said. A prompt, coordinated, and effective response is therefore essential. Central to Thursday's discussions was assembling an armed international stabilization force to keep security and ensure the disarming of the militant Hamas group, a key demand of Israel and cornerstone of the ceasefire deal. Hamas has provided little confidence that it is willing to move forward on disarmament. The administration is under no illusion on the challenges regarding demilitarization, but has been encouraged by what mediators have reported back, according to a U.S. official who was not authorized to comment on comments publicly and spoke on condition of anonymity. But the unresolved issue of disarming Hamas is a sticking point that could very well delay or even derail the U.S. plan. U.S. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking at a dusty army base in southern Israel, repeated his pledge that there will be no reconstruction of Gaza before a demilitarization. His foreign minister, Gideon Saar, said during yesterday's ceremony there must be a fundamental de-radicalization process. Trump told the gathering that Hamas has promised to disarm and would be met very harshly if it fails to do so. But he gave few details on how the difficult task would be carried out. Secretary of State Marco Rubio acknowledged there is a long ways to go in Gaza. There's a lot of work that remains. It will require the contribution of every nation-state represented here today, Rubio said.
From Mary Clara Dale, the Associated Press, we have a story: slavery exhibit reinstalled despite legal fight. An exhibit detailing the lives of 9 people enslaved by President George Washington in Philadelphia is being reinstalled on Thursday despite an ongoing legal fight between the city and the Trump administration. The stories and images that have been displayed for 2 decades were abruptly removed last month following an executive order by President Trump. The city and supporters subsequently sued for the exhibit to be restored after a federal judge set a deadline of today to achieve that. Mayor Sherelle Parker visited Independence Mall, the site of the former president's house, on Thursday morning. "I want you to know I'm grateful," Parker said as she introduced herself to several of the National Park Service workers lifting large panels back onto the display area. Parker is the first black woman to be elected mayor in Philadelphia. "It's our honor," one replied. The restoration work was expected to continue through Friday. The U.S. Attorney's Office, which is appealing senior U.S. District Judge Cynthia Roof's ruling, declined to comment on the restoration work, a spokesperson said. Trump's order called for restoring truth and sanity to American history at the nation's museums, parks, and landmarks. The administration argued that it alone can decide what stories are told of Park Service properties around the country. Although many people feel very strongly about this slavery exhibit one way or another, other people may disagree or feel strongly another way. Assistant U.S. Attorney Gregory Inden Birkin argued during a January 30th court hearing. Ultimately, he said, the government gets to decide to choose the message it wants to convey. Roof cut him off, calling his comments dangerous and horrifying. As the fate of the exhibit played out in court, educators brought students to the site to reflect on the missing history, and supporting the exhibit posted messages such as "Washington owned slaves here" on the empty walls. Independence Mall is one of the several historical sites where the administration has quietly removed content about the history of enslaved people, the LGBTQ plus community, and Native Americans in what some call an erasure of the nation's history. Well, we're coming to an end of our reading for the day. We got a couple of great comics here today. And Beetle Bailey, Beetle's standing at the lunch counter, he says to Cook, "Have you thought about opening a restaurant when you get out?" And he says, "I have." And Beetle says, "Don't."
Classic.
And then Zitz, the mom is standing over there arranging some flowers, and Dad and Jeremy come in, and they both have colds with the little red nose, the red noses and the dots over their head, and they both sneeze giant sneezes. Achoo! And she says, "Bless you." A minute later, she's standing there staring straight ahead, and then she's laying in bed saying, "Or not."
Yesterday's comic depicted Dad catching a cold as he drove by some guy who was sneezing and coughing and so forth. So.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, February 20th of 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, please call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Don Williams
and J.J. Patek. Thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print